From Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth Congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parshat Va'era, 10 plagues, 4 prayers. We're all familiar with the idea of the 10 plagues, the Aseret HaMakot, the Eser Makot, 10 plagues that afflicted the Egyptians. What we're not perhaps as focused on are the 4 prayers. Within the 10 plagues and its entire story, there is also the very interesting story, sort of a leitmotif, a subtext, a story that accompanies the story, a story of the 4 prayers of Moses, not against the Egyptians, but for the Egyptians. This idea that when there's a plague, it's the Jews themselves who pray to remove it. It's found already in the story of Abraham. When Avimelech was plagued, Hitpalel Badcha, that he was told, Avimelech, the king of the Philistines, was told that Abraham would pray for him, and Vayipalel Abraham al Avimelech v'amato, that indeed Abraham prayed for the Philistine king. So too here, in the 10 plagues, 4 times, Moses prays for the Egyptians. First, in the plague of the Tzfardaim, the plague of the frogs. Paro comes to him and he says, Hatiru Hashem, pray. Hatiru is a form of either praying a lot or very intensely. And v'yaser Tzfardaim, get rid of those Tzfardaim. Now, Moshe has an interesting challenge. God never told him he'd remove the plagues. God said he would bring the plagues. Who said that Moshe is in charge of removing the plagues? So Moshe plays games with Pharaoh. He says, yeah, really? When would you like to remove the plague of Tzfardeia? Of course, we know Pharaoh would like it gone as soon as possible, but he doesn't want to say that. He doesn't want to seem like he's so desperate. So he said, well, tomorrow. He says, fine. You will see that Ki ein Hashem Elokeinu, there's no one like God. No one like God as far as what? To remove the plagues. We always think of, you should know that God is God because he brings the plagues. Moshe realizes a new opportunity to show Paro that God not only brings plagues, God removes plagues as well. In fact, the Torah doesn't spare any words. It tells us that Moshe did do that. He went away from Paro, and Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem, he called out to God with a complete heart. And why did he have to pray with such a complete heart? Says the Abarbanel, he had to because God never said he was going to remove the plague. So how do we know that God is going to listen? This reminds us of Mount Carmel, of Har Carmel, where Elijah makes up a whole harebrained scheme as to how the fire will come from heaven and eat his sacrifices, but he never asked God in advance of this plan. And he has to pray to God with all his heart that please bring the fire from heaven to show the pagans that God is real. So too here, Moshe has to pray really hard so that he can prove to Pharaoh not only that God brings plagues, but that God removes plagues. Of course, the fact that God can remove it also shows that he brought it. But it's also something else. And that is to show that God is not only Elohim, the judge, but also Hashem. He is the God of mercy. And he is Hashem and Elokeinu. He's both. And then we see again with the plague of Arov. Again, he says, Hatiru Badi, pray for me. Paro actually asks them to pray for him. And he says, yes, Vatarti el Hashem. And then Moshe goes out, Vayatar el Hashem. He prays very hard to God. Vayas Hashem kidvar Moshe. Several times it says that God did as Moshe had requested. Because Moshe, again, was winging it. He was on his own. And God listened to Moshe. This part of the plagues, the story of the 4 prayers, that's Moshe's innovation. And like the Gemara says about dropping the 10 commandments, it's like Hashem says, Yesh koyach. That's correct. This is what we want to do. We want to pray, and we want to show the Egyptians that God answers prayer. Again in the Barad, the hail plague, he says, I have sinned and please stop all this stuff. Another language of prayer. We had ha'atiru to pray exceedingly. We had vayitzak to call out and scream out to God. And now vayifros kapav to lift one's hands to God and to pray that this plague ends. Finally, in the story of the ASBEE, next week's parsha, again he says, forgive me and atiru l'Hashem, and pray to God. So now we have two elements. Number one, pray for forgiveness for me, and pray for removal of the plagues. And again, vayatar el Hashem, he calls out to God. Again, it's the language of Hashem. The Egyptians should know not just that I am God, the powerful, but God, Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the Tetragrammaton, God of mercy. That's what we want to show, is that God is not only a God of vengeance and an Ish Milchama, the God of war, but also a God of healing. Moshe says this most clearly at the end of his life in the Parshat Hazinu, Ani Amit V'Achayeh. Yes, God, God brings death. God causes everything, including death. V'Achayeh, He also brings life, whether revival of the dead, the creation of a newborn child. I smite, but I also heal. God is also the healer. In Parshat Beshalach, God turns to the Jews and says, look, you know those plagues. I don't want to put any of these plagues on you, because Ani Hashem Rofecha, I am the Lord, your healer. I want to be your healer. I don't want to bring the one who brings the plagues of Egypt on you. As it says in some of the curses that are described to the Jews, if they don't follow the commandments, we'll get Kol Madvei Mitzrayim, all the illness of Egypt. But we don't want that. We want the healing. The point is that as we read these parshiot, it's too easy to just say, oh, it's a parsha of the 10 plagues. Let's talk also, not only about the 10 plagues and the power of God, but also about the healing of God, about the 4 prayers, about how again and again Moshe prays, how this was his idea, this is sort of Moshe's addendum to the whole project of how to convince Paro that there is a God. We're not just trying to convince him of the power of God, we're also trying to convince him of the kindness of God, the chesed of God, the splendor, the healing nature, that God is our ultimate doctor of sorts. When we say V'yadu Mitzrayim K'Ani Hashem, that we want the Egyptians to know that I am God. The Baal Shem Tov says, which Egyptians? We want the Egyptians to know. We care about the Egyptians. The Egyptians are going to go back to paganism. V'yadu Mitzrayim, the Jews who are like Egyptians. We all at times are like an Egyptian, or we begin to think like an Egyptian. And our job is V'yadu Mitzrayim, we who have ingested, who have absorbed a lot of Egyptian outside values. We should know that Ani Hashem, notice the language of Hashem, I am the Lord of mercy. I have mercy on the Jews who are being beaten and downtrodden and afflicted for being slaves. I have mercy even on the Egyptians. And Moshe himself prays for the Egyptians. He's not only Moshe, the Redeemer and the Smiter, Moshe who prays for the enemy. We in the land of Israel, we sometimes have to afflict our enemies. They're oppressing the whole southern region of Israel, attacked with rockets. And we have to be people of war, like God is a God of war. But ultimately, if someone is sick, a member of the Gaza government is sick, the children are treated in our hospitals. Ani Hashem Rofecha. We act like God, and we heal as well. And this week of great tragedy around the world, we're all mourning the loss of the French victims, whether those in the newspaper or those in the kosher grocery. There are those who call for all kinds of vengeance and all that. And we remember, Ani Hashem Rofecha, that ultimately religion is not just about vengeance and power, but religion is about also Ani Hashem Rofecha, that God is our ultimate healer. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshe Sfard Bethel Emeth congregation here in Memphis, Tennessee. Join us each week for our discussion of the Parsha and the various holidays. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit ASBEE.org.